What's going on, guys? TowerNumberNine here, and today I have played several games with another new Star Wars Unlimited leader that they just previewed, Mother Talzin, the leader of the Nightsister Clan. And Talzin is a really interesting leader. Let's get into my findings. So, Mother Talzin, Power Through Magic, is a vigilance villainy leader. As an action on her leader side, you can exhaust to use the Force, lose your Force token, give a unit -1/-1 for this phase. She deploys on 5 resources as a 3/7 with the Force and Night traits, and on attack, you may give a unit -1/-1 for this phase. It's worth noting that on that unit side, you do not have to use the Force. You just give the -1/-1 regardless of whether or not you have a Force token to spend. So her ability is very similar, but it does get more efficient price-wise. This is a really powerful leader flip, and that was one of the first things that jumped out at me after playing with her for a bit. I didn't realize how strong it was going to be at first glance, but her 3/7 stats plus that on attack basically mean she has the old 4/7 profile that Boba Fett did in terms of the amount of damage she can deal in a lot of situations. Now, there's times when it's worse, but there's also times when it's better. And overall, Mother Talzin's flip is very powerful. So that was one of the things that really jumped out at me. And she's also well positioned to make use of the Force token mechanic and of other Force synergies, as you might expect. She works well with a lot of the Knight cards. So Nightsister Warrior here, 2-cost Vigilance 2/2, Force Knight when defeated, draw a card. This is another card that really surprised me. I thought it was going to be bad. I actually found it to be quite effective. Um, so even if the opponent ends up clearing this unit, which is quite possible, it doesn't have the best stats, you're going to be drawing a card. The fact that it's a Force unit that you can play on the first turn is good because it enables those Force synergies, including the Force token base. If you're using one of those, allows you to get Talzin's ability rolling quickly, and just, the card advantage is nice to have. Talzin's Assassin here is one that I had a better sense of likely being good, and is in fact very good for a Vigilance Villainy ground unit 4/4 with Force and Night. When played, you may use the Force, lose your Force token. If you do, give a unit -3/-3 for this phase. It didn't end up being that hard, at least in the games that I'd played, to engineer scenarios where Talzin's Assassin gets a kill when you play her, which then also leaves a 4/4 unit on the board. In some of those situations, you could compare, for instance, to playing Takedown. Same 4 resources, except Takedown does not leave anything on the board, and Talzin's Assassin leaves you with a pretty solid unit, which can then itself start generating those Force tokens. Then old Daka or Daka, not entirely sure how to pronounce that, Oldest and Wisest, is a 5-cost Vigilance Villainy ground unit. She is a 6/6, which is a quite strong stat line. And additionally, when played, you may defeat a friendly Knight unit not named Old Daka, and then you may play that unit from your discard pile for free. So that ability can be used, for instance, you can kill your Nightsister Warrior, and then you draw a card, and then you replay the Nightsister Warrior. And you can use it even with a unit that does not necessarily have any relevant ability. If you have a Knight unit that you just want to heal some damage from, you can defeat it and play it again. You can defeat Talzin's Assassin, replay it, and get the when played effect again. So pretty good synergy there with other Knight cards. I think this is the only card in the game right now that has synergy with the Knight trait, but I think there's a good chance that we're going to see more Knight synergy in the future, just like lore-wise and with the theme of this set, and the fact that they're clearly putting in quite a few cards for this Mother Talzin package. Force token base seems really important here. So the one that I pictured here is the Jedi Temple, but there's a base of this for every color in the new set. 2 of them haven't been previewed yet. I believe they've showed the Jedi Temple, and then I'm blanking on which other Force base has been shown. Maybe the blue one? I'm not sure. But anyway, they're all going to be 28 HP common bases. I think these are the ones that you're going to have, that you're going to be commonly using in Draft and Sealed. When a friendly Force unit attacks, the Force is with you, create your Force token. So these are going to allow you to generate repeat tokens when you attack with those Force units. This means that a deck that wants to focus on these is likely going to have to go heavily in the ground arena, because right now there are not space units that have that Force trait. This ability can be used multiple times in a turn pretty easily. There might be some ruling that comes out that says you can't do this, but as far as I can tell, the base doesn't exhaust, doesn't get an epic action token or anything. You can just keep doing this. So that might not be the final base that you end up using with Talzin. I think they did say there were going to be some other bases that had other ways to generate Force tokens, and it's going to be interesting to see what that ends up looking like. But for now, it seems like kind of the natural choice. One question that I thought was interesting is whether the base alone is enough force token generation. I found that it was a bunch of the time, but in situations where the opponent gained control of the ground arena, it was difficult to get the force token back. So it's possible that a more developed form of this deck will want to add additional ways to gain the force token. Right now, I think Drain Essence is the only card that grants a force token other than these bases. I believe, I could be wrong, but I think it's very likely there are going to be more cards that have the forces with you as part of their ability that simply haven't been previewed yet. It's going to take some more testing to see how exactly that works. It is also possible that we are going to see force space units, which would make it easier to keep that force token rolling even if the opponent gains control of the ground arena. So standard force synergy cards are also really good here. So since this deck already invests heavily in force units for the synergy with the base, and because that the knight units tend to be force and so on, cards like Force Throw or Force Lightning are great additions. Force Lightning has been a like secret good card ever since set one. The problem with Force Lightning is that the villainy side of things does not have good early game units to enable Force Lightning. That just changed. This set is bringing us early game force units that are quite powerful, both neutral and in villainy. So all of a sudden, Force Lightning is a very real threat, and it's actually a really strong removal piece. The fact that it defeats abilities makes it super good against certain plays, like Super Laser Technician, for instance, allows you to counter things like K2SO, which have other powerful when defeated effects. It can remove Sentinel from an opposing unit. It just has some really powerful abilities here. Now, there's also, the Fallen Lightsaber attached to a non-vehicle unit 3 for +3/+3, so on curve stats. And then if the attached unit is an enforced unit, gains on attack, deal 1 damage to each ground unit the defending player controls. One thing that I found was really cool is that if you give Mother Talzin the Fallen Lightsaber, she goes up to 6 power, and then between 6 power, the on attack ability, and her on attack ability to give -1/-1, she can kill even an 8 HP later like Darth Vader in one hit, which I thought was very cool. And I successfully did that in some testing that had the classic Darth Vader. Now, it might be interesting to add the constructed lightsaber. This card was previewed as part of the Legends of the Force preview season. I'm actually not a big fan of this card because it's below curve and highly conditional, given that it only attaches to specifically a force unit, so you can't play it on non-force ground units, unlike most of the other lightsabers. Additionally, the base stats are worse. So the one thing that does make me think about running this again, though, is so if you're attaching 20 or villain units, it's +2/+3 in raid 2. This is really just generally worse than Fallen Lightsaber's +3/+3 and 1 attack to all enemy ground units when you attack. There are some situations where +2/+3 raid 2 is better, notably if you really, really, really need damage on a base, but overall it seems worse. However, the part that's interesting to me is the prospect of playing it on a unit that is neither heroism nor villainy to give it Sentinel. That could be an interesting thing to include, and there are a few units like that in this build. I could easily see a potential deck that has more of those and sets up that as a way to potentially get some advantage against a more aggro deck, force them to crash into a powerful Sentinel unit. So that's the main thing that I've thought about with the constructed lightsaber. Ultimately, I didn't end up including it, but that does seem like an interesting option. Many of the force synergy cards, though, are just really excellent, but you have to be careful not to overdo it because there might be situations where you can't get a force unit to stick. This already hurts your leader ability since you need force units to run your base, get those force tokens, and use the leader ability, and you don't want to have too many cards that are reliant on having that force unit sticking on the board, or else you could really find yourself in some trouble. So this is the test version after some refinement. I played several games with this, and the 30 HP base Masasi Temple is not. It's just because SWODB makes you choose a base. I was essentially playing it as if it had the 28 HP, as if it had a 28 HP common base, makes a force token when a force unit attacks. So keep that in mind. But the rest of the deck, we have Daring Raid, Force Lightning, Force Throw. Force Lightning and Force Throw are nice removal options. Force Throw also doing some discard. Daring Raid is just a strong, flexible card. Dr. Pershing gives us some card draw. We have several small units there. The Kylos TIE Silencer as well. The Nightsister Warrior. I think I don't actually know how to pronounce her name, so the 2-cost 2/4 Nightsister is another option there. We have the Disabling Fang Fighter. We have Fifth Brother. Fifth Brother isn't really that good, but he is an early game force unit. I'm hoping that we see even more solid force units for this color combination, as it is kind of a weakness right now. Marin is pretty solid. Fallen Lightsaber, as I mentioned earlier, Darth Tyrannus, who is amazing, extremely, extremely powerful card. The fact that if you have one of these new Force token bases, he gains ambush while the Force is with you, and it's easy to get the Force to be with you. And he can then swing as a 4/3 shielded ambush for 4, which is just incredibly strong. We have one Daughter of Dathomir, which is in part included for the lore and in part because I did want to have a source of restore. We have Talzin's Assassin, who worked really well. 2 old Bakas, or Dakas, sorry, my bad. Um, 2 copies of No Glory Only Results with a 3rd in the sideboard, and 3 copies of Ruthless Raider, 3 copies of the new Savage Press. This card is really interesting because it's so easy to get the Force token with all the Force units in this build. I was thinking this guy would be actually worth it, and he was worth it, except I'm not totally convinced about him because he is a bit win more. Which is to say, if you're in one of those situations where the opponent gains control of the ground, you don't have your Force token, all of a sudden it's really, really not good to play this guy and take a large amount of damage on base and potentially another large amount of damage when they clear him. The stats are amazing, but I don't know that he's worth it. I might be trying to swap that slot out in the future. Maybe we would see it with something like Supreme Leader Snoke. I'm sure there's going to be other options too. Then we have Devastator as a top end kind of closer. There's another Devastator in the side. There's another Fang Fighter in the side. Right now, there are a fair few people who are playing expensive upgrades. I don't really think that's necessarily correct, but it's common enough that the Fang Fighters in main seem like a good include. Also great against pilot leaders. We have some top targets to help against aggro, and we have some shoot downs to help against space aggro in particular. So that is the early testing version of this build, and because I wanted it to be very mid-rangey, most of the removal is comparatively cheap, and we're not going for the full removal package. You'll note there isn't Super Laser Blast, Power of the Dark Side, stuff like that. It's possible some of those cards should come in. I could easily see a version of this deck that runs Power of the Dark Side and have that be an effective card, but I was trying to maintain the ability to be more aggressive against slower decks and play kind of a mid-range game plan, which is pretty different from the classic blue-red villainy. Some other things to consider testing: pillage. So, the discard package is pretty useful. You have the force throw. Putting pillage in there as well could help you attack more control-oriented decks, attack the hand. Owen Lars is an interesting option because there are so many force units in the deck to potentially run his when defeated ability, and he does have Restore 2 to help against the more aggro builds. And then Drain Essence, I discussed a bit earlier. So this is a different removal option that is not as efficient as Daring Raid, but it has the upside of creating a force token. And depending on what testing looks like in terms of whether the force base is enough, I could see Drain Essence being a useful card to include as well. So another thing that might be interesting is trying a command version of Mother Talzin. So running, you can run cards like Darth or like Maul, Darth Vader. You don't probably end up with ECL since you'll be running the Force base, but there are some good ambush options, and ambushing with a Force unit does create that Force token. It's worth noting that Maul does not actually have the Knight trait. His lord, he is from that group, but I guess he joined the mainstream Sith or whatever too early to really be considered part of the Knight group in game. The main issue that I might have with this is that there isn't very much Force synergy in Command right now, but that could easily change if we see new synergy options in Legends of the Force, which I actually think is pretty likely given the set's emphasis on the Force overall. We do also have the one synergy option, Palpatine's Return, which could be great here. Blue-Green Valen is a classic archetype, and this could be an interesting new twist on it, in my opinion. Palpatine's Return there, the one command Force synergy card that exists right now. Awkwardly, General's Blade, despite being neutral, is not a Force synergy card. It is specifically a Jedi synergy card, so it does not work here. But yeah, the early results are pretty good. I was playing this. It's a fun mid-rangey deck. The Mother Talzin's leader flip is really strong in the right situation. She can really bully an opponent, especially if you give her one of those lightsabers. But even if you don't have some upgrade for her, just the 3/7 plus that on attack makes her a powerhouse in early unit combat. It's really good. And so yeah, I mean, she's also, if you have her out, and the opponent flips Kira. Talzin can attack into Kira, win that fight, and survive, which comparatively few leaders can do because you get to give Kira -1/-1. You take your 3 damage, you give Kira -1/-1, you swing in for 3, and you defeat her, which is, notable. And then you take 3 in return because you debuffed her. You're still alive. Now you're alive with 1 HP, but you're alive. So very interesting situation there. And overall, I think she's a really strong leader on both sides. Nice new form of ping damage. Insofar as it is good to have a deck that is running one of these force token bases and has maybe some other ways to generate force tokens and so on, Talzin seems like a real competitor because I really do think both her leader and her leader unit sides can be very powerful. And she also just kind of naturally goes with some of these other force synergies and so on that seem likely to be strong in this set. So we'll see where she lands, but I'm pretty optimistic about Mother Talzin right now. What do you guys think? Do you think Mother Talzin is actually really bad and I'm missing some crucial weakness? Do you think you've figured out some combination that's going to work better with her than the version that I made? Have you already played some games yourself and have some thoughts to share? I'd be interested in hearing from y'all in the comments below. Be sure to like this video if you liked it, dislike the video if you didn't like it. I do actually look at the like dislike video ratios and see, what is content people are liking. And other than that, yeah, subscribe if you want to see some more. And there's going to be some more Star Wars Unlimited content featuring both preview season stuff and some looks at, competitive meta cards from the current meta and so on. So yeah, stay tuned for more. And I will also, if all goes well, I will be actually casting as a commentator with the McClunky Gaming stream for FFG's big regional tournament in Minneapolis. So that is going to be pretty hype, hopefully, and I hope to see some of you in the stream chat when that comes up. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks to you all for watching. We'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.